Hi everyone. We're going to look at how to work backwards with volume in order to find the height of a cylinder or to find the radius of a cylinder given one of the other two. We're going to start with that, and we're going to look at cones and we're going to look at spheres as well. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we have the right formula. So if we have a cylinder as our shape, we got to use the cylinder formula, which is down here. Volume of a cylinder equals pi r squared h. So let's start with that. So the formula is V equals pi r squared h. Now, to substitute in, we're going to take the numbers that we have and we're going to plug them in where they go into the equation. So what we've got is actually the volume, which is 588 pi. The pi needs to go in there for V. And then we've also got the radius, which is 7. So that goes in for R. And we're going to look for H. So we're going to take everything and plug it in now. So the 588 pi, don't lose that pi, equals pi times the radius, in parentheses, squared, times the height h. Then we're going to just solve this equation for h. The nice thing is on both sides, we have a pi. So we can divide by pi on both sides to get rid of that. That makes our numbers a lot easier to work with because you won't have any irrational values being multiplied in there. So then we get 588 equals 7 squared times h. Now, 7 squared is 7 times 7, which is 49. So 49h equals 588. And then we're left with a one-step equation. Simply divide by 49 on both sides, and that'll give you just h on the right side. And 588 divided by 49 is 12. So the height is 12, and our units here are all inches. So the height is 12 inches. That's how we work backwards to find the height given the radius. For a cone, it's very similar. The only difference is we've got to use a different formula. So I've got my calculator here in case we need it. So we've got to make sure we use that 1/3 in front for a cone. So the volume would equal 1/3 pi r squared h. So we take the volume, which is 128 pi. We take the radius, which is 8. We plug those in and we solve for h. So 128 pi equals 1/3 pi times the radius 8 squared times the height. Again, we're going to try and get rid of everything and get h by itself. We've got pi's on both sides. Let's divide them both by pi to get rid of that. We're left with 128 equals 1/3. 8 squared we could do here, before we write down 8 squared, we could just say, well, that is 64. 8 times 8 is 64. H. Now we want to get rid of the 1/3 and the 64. To get rid of 1/3, you can do times 3, or you could divide by 1/3, because it's being multiplied right now. Multiplying by the reciprocal is often a little bit easier, so we could do times 3 over 1 to both sides here. And that makes it 3 over 3, which is just 1. So those essentially cancel out because you just get a 1 there, because 3 over 3 is 1. And then 3 times 128 would be on the left side there, and then just 64 on the right side. So we get 384 equals 64h. Then divide by 64, and we get our answer for h. And our answer should be 6 centimeters. Because our volume was in centimeters, that's how we know what unit to use. Okay, so just be careful with the next one here. It's got a diameter, not the radius. So make sure you find what the radius is before you plug that in into the formula for a cylinder. I want to look at a harder example though. We might need this calculator, so let's drag this with us because we're going to need this down below. Let's jump all the way to here. Look at number 5. So for number 5, we're going to find the radius now if we're given the height. This is a little bit trickier. Let's look at number 6 actually, because a cone's a little bit trickier to work with. So let's try this. So we've got the radius of the cone, or looking for the radius of the cone if we've got the height and we've got the volume. So the formula of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared h. We're going to plug in our volume in for V and our height in for h this time. So 126.9 pi equals 1/3 pi. We don't know r, So it's r squared times 4.7. Now we're going to try and get everything gone and just have r left. That's our goal, to solve for r. Let's get rid of our pi's first on both sides by dividing by pi on both sides. So we get 126.9 equals a third of r squared times 4.7. We've got some options here as to what we can do next. You can get rid of the third first, or you can get rid of the 4.7 first. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to get rid of the 1/3 just because it's kind of a fraction. It kind of makes it a little bit trickier than it needs to be. So I'm going to do again the reciprocal, so times 3/1 to both sides. And then that gets rid of the 1/3. So we do 126.9 times 3. And that gives us 380.7 equals. And the 4.7 being after the r squared is kind of weird, but I'm going to write it like that for now. We know because of the communion property, you could put that in front. Doesn't really matter. Either way, we know this is multiplying, so we can divide by 4.7 on both sides here to get rid of the 4.7. That leaves us with 81 equaling r squared. So here's where the calculator comes in. We need to undo a squared by using the square root. So we get rid of the squared here on the r by using the square root of both sides. So the square root is right above the x squared button. To get to that, we're going to hit second and then hit the x squared button. That'll bring up a square root symbol like this. Then you're going to type in 81, and then you could close the parentheses, of course, and then hit enter, and you'll get your answer. And the answer would be the radius is 9 millimeters, because our units this time are in millimeters. And the next part of this is very similar when we go to a sphere. Just a little bit different, because in order to get rid of a cube, we're going to use the cubed root. So let's bring down that calculator and talk about that. So here's our calculator again. But now we want to undo, so if we've got x cubed equals 8, you want to use not the square root, but the cubed root of both sides. That's a little sloppy. Let's try to make it a little bit neater here. To get rid of that x cubed, we use the cubed root of both sides like this. That gives us x equals some number multiplied by itself 3 times to give us 8. Well, if you're not sure what that is, you can use the calculator for that. And the way you type this in is you want to use the opposite of the caret. The caret key is right here. The opposite of it is above the caret, which you have to use the second option. But before you type that, you got to type in a 3, then do second caret. So you'll get a little x root like that, and then type in the 8. What that does is it puts the 3 into the root. So 3 first, then second caret, and then type the 8 and close your parentheses. You should get 2. That's how we do the cubed root on our calculator. So hopefully that's enough of examples to help you guys finish these pages here. So go back and do page 18, finish that example, do 19, 20, and then there's a couple more pages on a separate worksheet that have just more practice. So once you've got those done, do the other practice that goes with it.